also want to talk about, this week is, for many who celebrate, it's the Thanksgiving, and talk about the act of being thankful. And what does that exactly mean? Some being thankful means sharing what they do with others. Some is gift giving. For others, it's just the warm embrace of another after they do something for them. We often don't think about how being thankful has an impact on how you live your life. It impacts relationships, it impacts your attitude, it impacts your thoughts, and it impacts your personal worship. With this Speakers Life Ministries, for the next 4 days, that's what we're going to be talking about. We're also going to talk about the history of that word itself and where that comes from. But today's topic, we're going to talk about spiritual renewal. What does it mean and how do you get there? We often think about spiritual just means adopting a thought process, a tradition, without actually giving any definition as to why you're doing it. Just as an act to say, this is what I'm told I'm supposed to do, versus how you take in your personal beliefs, how do you allow it to flow through your life, to make changes or enhance how you already are. So that spiritual renewal is very important, and we should be daily renewing our thought process. And we'll be discussing this from 2 Chronicles chapter 29. And it'll be verses 1 through 11. But before we get to the topic to put on the table this afternoon, I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor to Michael. Talk about Black Exchange and exactly how you want that organization to impact on the community.
Thank you, baby. Thank you, baby. And if you didn't mention it, you can find Speak Life into Ministries on Facebook. It's found just like it's spoken. Black Change is a organization which aim is to change the community, not through actions alone, but through mindset. If we can change the mindset of the youth, we can actually change the culture and the community itself. If we can get their mind off the streets and more into academics, spiritual preferences, doctrines, and a lot of the things that we need within our own community, if we can serve each other, for each other, that would eliminate the issue, I believe, of unfairness and unjust. So it's a community effort. It's community-based right here in Macon, Georgia. We'll upstart. We'll soon be kicking off many events and many things soon, starting with a cleanup of the area that I myself will be staying in. Any volunteers willing to help, shovels, any garden tools, any way that you can help. Trash bags, or you can just bring by some water. And it comes from the need. I don't need personally to speak too much on the need. We all see the news. We all see what's happening within our community. We see the products that are going into our community and the outcome of them products. So hopefully, if we can change one mind a year, that's great for me. But if we can mass produce that on a mass level, that'll be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. And you were talking about that whole change in the mindset. Again, that's a very important aspect in how we can channel that change in the community. We can't just say, let's go do something, and then the next day you're not doing it because in reality you hadn't changed your mindset. You just did it because you saw others do it. For you to have that passion for anything, you have to one, believe it yourself, but you also have to believe that it's a greater purpose than it's just changing you. Because you can make the change for yourself all day long, but if you're not igniting that within your community, there's actually not going to be a change across the board. And then whatever bad habits we may have now as a whole is going to come up in our next generations. So we don't want that cycle to keep going, whatever it is, whether it's violence, the way we treat our communities, the littering,
Literacy.
and yes.
Yeah, literacy.
Yes, we don't have enough that can actually read well enough to understand what they're facing every day. And that's especially in the genre of taking care of your community, needing to vote, needing to know why the candidates are important for you.
Exactly.
And what they stand for, not just because you hear it. You have to go able to read it, because every so often they'll stand up on stage that didn't follow through. And it's not necessarily to say that they was what they set out to do, but unfortunately the outcome isn't always what they hope to happen. So you have to follow to make sure of what's being out there is actually what's taking place. That, that's another topic we're going to get into later in the year of 2019. We're going to actually start reading programs for youth and for adults. So stay tuned for that, definitely. So what we're coming to is 2 Chronicles chapter 29. And again, this is spiritual renewal. Too often we think spiritual just means church, means religion. Sit inside the walls of a building, listening to somebody tell you what you should be thinking and feeling and how. That's just practicing a religious sector. That means you are just following what you're being told. When you get into your spiritual, that is you connecting with what you are learning, and you're embracing it to yourself. You're making the appropriate changes for you, but you're taking that and you're connecting within your community with each other. In this much deeper level than you dive in to study, and then you meditate, and that brings a higher height inside of you. Again, the verses itself is verses 1 through 9. And if I could get Michael, please, to read 1 through 6 for me.
You got 29, right? Hezekiah began to reign when he was 25 years old, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Abijah, the daughter of Zechariah. And he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord, according to all that David his father had done. He, in the first year of his reign, in the first month, opened the doors of the house of the Lord and repaired them. And he brought in the priests and the Levites and gathered them together into the east street. And he said unto them, Hear me, ye Levites, sanctify now yourselves, and sanctify the house of the Lord of your fathers, and carry forth the filthiness out of the holy place. For our fathers have trespassed and done that which was evil in the eyes of the Lord our God, and have forsaken him, and have turned away their faces from the habitation of the Lord, and turned their backs. That was 2 Chronicles 29, 1 through 6.
And I'm going to read 7 through 11. Also, they have shut up the doors of the porch and put out the lamps, and have not burned incense nor offered burnt offerings in the holy place unto the God of Israel. Wherefore the wrath of the Lord was upon Judah and Jerusalem, and he hath delivered them to trouble, to astonishment, and to hissing, as ye see with your eyes. For lo, our fathers have fallen by the sword, and our sons and our daughters and our wives are in captivity for this. Now it is mine heart to make a covenant with the Lord and God of Israel, and his fierce wrath may turn away from us. My sons, be not now negligent, for the Lord hath chosen you to stand before him, to serve him, and ye should minister unto him and burn incense. Now in this, it could have been really easy for Hezekiah to just say, like, well, this is what my forefathers have always done, and I'm just going to go with the flow. Instead, he stood his ground for what he believed to be right and set forth a reasoning for the others to change their mindset on how they did things in the house of the Lord, how they worshiped, got rid of the things that was defiling that worship. Mm-hmm. And that makes me think about us as individuals now. We may not necessarily have particular temples to go to for worship only, but we have that worship space with us always. So what things could we do as individuals to change our mindset as to how we live, how we treat our worship space? And at the end of the day, that's our bodies. Our bodies is our temple. So, how we think, how we feel, people we're around, a lot of times that in itself strangles out that worship spirit within us. And too often we're afraid for people to see us worship. Mm-hmm. They think that if you worship, there's no way that you can also be someone to be amongst your friends and family to have fun and let your hair down and enjoy yourself. That doesn't mean any of that. It just means you got to know where you stand for yourself. But too often people think if people see I change, they won't like me. But what's important to know is that renewal not only is going to bring in a greater inner peace for yourself, but your surroundings are going to change. People are either going to just walk away themselves because they don't want to be bothered with your, your peace. They want you to be hyped up and angry, upset about everything. When it takes a whole lot more energy for that, way more, than for you to be happy and at peace. That's where you have many people who don't do others right. Later they've got health issues. Mm-hmm. Because it does damage to your internal. But one thing that was happening there during Hezekiah's time was because of the things that they were doing in that temple, it also suppressed their blessings. It suppressed their ability to express themselves. Mm-hmm. They no longer knew how to do this because they were so wrapped into all of that which was considered filth at that time. Mm-hmm. So if we were to sit down and analyze ourselves, would we say that we're suppressing at any given time our ability to worship? And what does that suppression look like? I know for a little while for myself, mine was disappointment. That was my suppressor. I'd seen some things within a religious sector that I thought wasn't right. And when I felt that my mom at the time needed the support, I didn't think she got it. And she went through this depression that she'd never been there if she'd had that support. And then my brother went through some things, and he kind of went wayside too. And I don't believe that the support within that religious sector was designed for him. It was like, well, that's what he wanted to do. I don't have room to come talk to him about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he made his choice. But he was so young. He should still been insisting to get, he should have been a insistence upon others to give that guidance, one way or the other. But instead, you know, he just went out and did his own thing. But at the same time, not getting that spiritual backing. And I eventually got over it. Let's just say it like that, because it was some years. I'll be honest. And I was at home. I'd study and things of that nature. I wasn't doing club and play. I wasn't practicing my belief anywhere. I didn't want to. But that was me holding back, blocking myself from being able to be greater. And too often we do that, whether we're upset with a family member, somebody inside that religious sector, we blame God for everything, whether we're sick, our finances ain't right. We think that we're supposed to be just having luck at everything okay. You know, even the scripture says there's going to be trials and tribulations. But it's about how we react to those trials and tribulations, which is another part of that suppression. So if you are at that point of suppressing, then how do you rekindle the fire at your altar? And I think many times people think that if you're talking about being at your altar, you should be at church in front of the pulpit is your altar. It's not. Because if we're our own temple, then that altar's with us.
Exactly.
And so that fire, how do you rekindle it? How do you, in your own way, decide I'm going to relight my incense, I'm going to do my burnt offerings? And for me, because music has always been my passion, I enjoy it. It makes me overly excited some days, but that's not a bad thing. I also enjoy dancing. So music and dance together, that was what ignited my passion, that fire at my altar, because I believe that's how I communicate spiritually. And you know, being able to determine exactly what and how you communicate on the spiritual level is so simply the best way for you to reignite that passion fire, but also start the renewal process about your thought process, what you're going to do about being committed to study. And to study doesn't just mean pick up the Bible.
No,
It really doesn't. I love to read. There's plenty of authors out there who are putting together books. They're not just showcasing scripture, but they're showcasing people's personal experiences. Workbooks that make you think. And as well as sometimes just music without words. You ever listen to a song? Is this all instrumental? The part about music that gets me so excited is really the equipment itself, the drums, snares, the horn, flute. Each has its own unique voice, but they also speak. You know, 9 times out of 10, if you've never heard the lyrics to a song, you're going to know some of them, especially that chorus, from just listening to the instruments. That's what that spiritual balance is. The universe itself is definitely part of that spiritual. My daughter, when she was younger, we used to sit outside at night and we would listen to some of the birds that would stay up late. You hear them chirping. And it's funny because even listening, you would think you would know what they said. And we were watching one, it was a baby, and there was, looked like a mom bird, but the very little one said something, and then the bigger one's voice just kind of roared, and the little one stopped and kind of looked, and it flew toward the bigger one. And we're over here just making up stories. And I said, yeah, and that bird said, you don't get your tail in the house, you know, the street lights on. Sometimes just the listening to the leaves, the trees go. Not only is it music, but you know, you can gain a lot of personal insight because how you interpret things says a lot about you. So my daughter, also her thing, and she got me doing it, and this man does it way too often, which is staring at the clouds, trying to take images of it.
Oh, yeah.
But
I do that
it's
too.
funny when you see it though, you realize something, it's not really there. But how your mind works is so powerful that you can see what's not. So if we can do that in just about staring at the clouds, just imagine if we look upon our community and say, I want my community to look like this.
Exactly.
And then you just go do it.
Exactly.
But it takes a lot of spiritual training in order to do that.
Exactly.
You know, you can't just one day say, I'm going to be spiritual, and then the next day, I want to go out with it. A song that I can't never remember the name of it, and I'm glad that my choir leader's not here, because we sing at church enough. But in the song, you know, it says, let me be spiritual. And it's funny because also in the song, they name off the fruits of the Spirit. But how many people really sing and say the song? Do they understand what it really means to be spiritual?
Spiritual.
Many think because they go to church makes it spiritual.
No.
You can go to church. You can sit there, church, I don't care what the church is made out of. It can be the most beautiful thing on earth. It's not going to change what you have inside. Your mental is not going to ever change.
I actually think a lot of people go to church just to say other people can say they was in church or they go to church.
Yeah.
But you can go to church and still not be in the temple. If the temple is within yourself and your own mental, your own spirituality. The church is just a building.
Yes.
You are the temple.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, and within that, we want to raise our consciousness, which means enlightening ourselves. So that's not just to say, well, I went to church, I heard a sermon, yay, his sermon was great. Let me give you a prime example. I just sat through service today and listened to someone come in. They missed a portion, but all they caught was some of the fiery phrases that was said. And the fiery phrases, that's what they're back to repeating, clapping hands and repeating. That's great that something caught your attention. Now, get the meat of the subject in. And we don't do that enough. We're like, yeah, this is what he talked about, but to take it and apply it is something different. Mike and I were having a discussion with someone else about why study? What's the purpose?
Oh yeah.
And it kind of does blow me away a little bit, although I shouldn't be surprised that too many people don't take it seriously about studying the Bible. They think, well, I read it,
I
won't.
believe it. I know it.
I know what it says, I can quote it. But how many people are sports fans? And
They know all the stats.
They know the stats, they know the players' name, where they were birthed. They sometimes know their parents' information. They know so much about these people to make them seem as though they're part of their everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
But your spiritual walk, you allow for someone else to guide you into something that really does mean your life and how you react to everything. I'm putting my husband on the spot. But I'm always doing that, so easy stuff. We talk about that spiritual, which it gives off a vibe. It is usually a peaceful, calming vibe. We went to get tires on Friday. That's all he wanted to do. He was trying to shop for tires, and it happened to be the owner of the place that was helping him. And by the time he finished interacting with the owner to get these tires, he done had a part-time job just drop in his lap. But the man was happy with the spirit. He liked the spirit. But without having that inner peace, most people don't want to react with you. They don't want to interact with you. They don't want to deal with you. They see you from a distance. And sometimes not them. But it affects a lot of things that we do. And I just have to go over about those things it affects. Because I really never thought about it this way until it was brought to me this way. So how we do everything has a lot to do with we're thankful for what we do, thankful for what we're given. That spiritual walk shows it. Because you're going to every day, you're going to dive in to enhance your knowledge. So if we're not thankful for waking up this morning, having the ability to read, having the ability to comprehend what we read, and then apply it and share it, that spiritual walk really doesn't mean anything.
It really does.
So with that, being thankful goes along right with that spiritual renewal. And that spiritual also affects the same things that being thankful does, which is our thoughts, our attitudes, relationships, and our worship. And it's interesting though, because too many people, and I was thinking about the attitude part, you can tell the difference when someone's found the peace within, because they're not upset when other people do wrong. They will go out their way to help somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And majority of the time, if things just don't go the way it should, they're like, oh well, I'm gonna make the best of what I got.
Oh yeah.
When it comes to our thought process, thinking people out to get you because you're not accomplishing. I think that's the most common, is thinking someone else don't want you to do well. And then relationships, you can't hold them. Because if you're not willing to give and receive, then you don't have a relationship. So you're just kind of there, they're just kind of there, and eventually it fades. And if you two don't fade within whatever dynamic that relationship is, it just won't grow.
That giving and receiving, when I reread this verse, 2 Chronicles 29:5, and I will reread it. It said, until them hear ye me, Levites, sanctify now yourselves and sanctify the house of the Lord of your fathers, and carry forth the filthiness out of the holy place. And she just speaking on giving and receiving. It says, get your filthiness out of the holy place, but it don't necessarily say bring it to my place.
Right.
I don't want to hear all the trash and dirt all the time. And I'm receiving that, and I'm giving you love, comfort, understanding, a different demeanor. At some point, that becomes a toxic relationship.
Yes.
Because you're not supposed to bring your trash or your filthiness over to me. To deal with it on your own. I may help you with it,
But yeah, I said all that.
Yeah, but I cannot be your spiritual landfill.
Yeah.
I refuse to be anybody's spiritual landfill. I just wanted to throw that in there, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. And that actually brings me to the next part about responding to experiences. Because too often we hold on to everything.
Mm-hmm.
We can be, 40, 50-year-olds, well, that was fine, my brother took my toy, type feel. That's another suppression, though. When you're living then versus now. And I don't think that anybody here could say, if they were still living for yesterday, they can function today. And I'm not saying that sometimes you're not going to feel like you're being knocked down, because that's just the human part of this. And you wouldn't be human if that was the case.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's your reason for not being able to do, then at the end of the day, the only person holding you back is yourself.
That's right.
And even with that physical part, I know somebody that says quite regularly, well, if so-and-so wasn't doing this and this, I wouldn't be stressing, I wouldn't be drinking, I wouldn't be this, and I'm sick all the time, losing weight, but they're not doing the things to you.
Mm-hmm.
They're not handing you the bottle and say drink because you're upset, or they're not refusing to cook you food because you're not eating it, you just choose not to. And then with that holding on to your past, again, that's reason for everything now.
Mm-hmm.
But in between that, you've had ample opportunities to change how you live, how you think, how you feel, and those you're around. But if you're going to keep it the same way, only person that can be blamed is a person in that position.
Mm-hmm.
If I was to say, well, I hope 2 years ago, Angela got to pick me up and I missed something. I missed an important meeting. But I can't put that on Angela. Because I say, okay, she's not coming, I need to just get there.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes when people blame somebody else, they really didn't want to follow through in the first place. Whether it's getting a job, bettering their financial, or changing how they live within their own home domain. If you're not going to make the changes, it's still on you.
So on you. I see so many people dragging around so much stuff from their past and then wondering why you're not getting nowhere. You get all the weight that you're carrying behind you. Sometimes you got to let that stuff go.
Yeah.
You got to,
Baggage.
get baggage. My 3 favorite words: life goes on.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to drop it and keep trucking.
And, we also look at a lot of health issues that come out of that holding on. And, there are some things people can't help, but there's some things that they can.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have really high blood pressure, and it's not all genetic. And then even within genetic, you can still make it worse. And it's not just the variation, it's the way you eat. So for some folks, eating is what they do when they're upset or depressed. So you're adding in all this extra that doesn't belong in the first place. Then you have the opposite, those who just don't eat.
Mm-hmm.
So, you might become diabetic because of it one way or the other. The hypertension or hypotension, depending upon what you got going on. Lack of iron, so you just don't eat. Don't eat the right stuff. And then their energy level is way low. And people want to blame because if I wasn't going through all the stuff, I have energy. But, you know, something was touched on a lot at church, and it made me think about what I wanted to talk about today, even more so, because everything we do at the end of the day is still a spiritual battle.
Yeah.
It's not about me and Angie not getting along. You know, it's not because, well, you know, Michael forgot to pick me up at work, you know, stuff. You know, those are minor compared to the spiritual battles. Because the spiritual battle has something to do with how we react.
Mm-hmm.
And it also has everything to do with how we grow. And it also has everything to do with what we create. Because at the end of the day, we are, outside of being designed for that praise and worship, we're designed to create. We are creators by birth. And what we create has everything to do with what we choose to put in ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
If all you do is put in a bunch of hate, then when you create, that's what you're going to create. Even without speaking, we're creating. You know, that aura and that vibe. And it has a lot to do with what we have surrounded ourselves. You know, Angie is very patient, so. But she is. And she has that nurturing, that teaching, even when she's not directly doing it. You know, that her giving the ability for someone else to do shows a lot about her. But then she brings in more of the same people. And that has a deeper rooted in me than if she just said, I got space, do you want to use it? You know, showcasing what she does, giving people more opportunities to not just grow what they do, but to do something new. And there's not enough of that. You know, more people are about, this is me, this is what I do. If you come in, you gotta do X, Y, Z.
Mm-hmm.
And that can tarnish some things. You know, they might come in and do it, but they're not getting anything from it. And at this point, they're just doing it just because you said so. Give them opportunity to say, well, I'm not interested in that, but can I do this?
Yeah.
You know, this is what my talent is.
Find out what they do for giving them the task.
Because that ability to create, I think is an important part of our spiritual. Because whether or not we're creating food, we're creating speeches, clothing, or just opportunity. When we walk within our path and we do it in such a loving manner for ourselves, it's going to be easy to give that same on to everybody else.
I make a point about creating.
Mm-hmm.
When also speaking on the spiritual level, your spirituality can create an aura or vibe around you. I think that's the most important thing that we can create, is a positive image or aura. Because I think we all been in a place where you around somebody and you just not feeling their vibe. You know, nobody wants that negative energy. Nobody wants to be around it. You know, at times we may tolerate it, but it's not a preferred preference.
One of my favorite scriptures for the renewal of oneself spiritually is Psalms 51:10. It speaks of create in me a clean heart, renew a right spirit in me. And, you know, we think that we're not able to have a clean conscience, a clean heart, just because we may have been a certain way once before. That's not always the case. In our reality, it's really never the case. You can renew yourself. and you can clean away all of that, as you're saying, to remove the filthiness from the temple. It does take a lot of work and dedication, but eventually it just becomes a natural flow of things. And my wish for everyone throughout this week is to think about not just being thankful for your abilities and your housing and your jobs, family, but how can you be thankful and show it every day by renewing yourself? And the question I want you to take with you is, what step can I take to increase my gratitude this week? It's not a task that happens overnight. You're not going to wake up tomorrow morning and your whole thought process changed, and the way you move, the way you treat each other. It's not going to happen overnight. But it's definitely something that if you work little by little every day, the changes can be seen big. It can be something as small as just putting a smile on your face every day. That smile can change how you act, how you feel. Telling someone they did a good job for the day. Showing appreciation for their kindness, their efforts. My final thought, when we do this, we also want to take that spiritual walk and showcase it to others. It's not just something we get up today, we're going to work on this one thing. Let's say for me, I want to work on patience, and I'm studying it. But somebody else that has the same issue you have. Share with them something you learned, because that's not the purpose for us to learn, is to keep to ourselves. That's part of that spiritual renewal. It reaches outside of us. And then we get that domino effect if we just keep on doing it. Yeah. For each candle that I light, I want to think about the lighting of the fire within us, reigniting the fire at the temple. How you want to do your burning offer, your incense offer. For this candle, my prayer goes for each person to ignite that passion that they once had for their spiritual need. That it's the same as they do for their social. Working on understanding what it means to be thankful and why you should be thankful, and then think about who you're thankful for. And last but not least, but to understand that we are all here designed to create. We're here to create love, joy, peace, bonds within the family, in the community, and most importantly, to praise and worship. So I want to leave you with that thought. And until next time, stay blessed.